I'm an Arcane only mage and I'm trying to get to level 60 without dying a single time. Last time we finally reached level 40 and unlocked a new rank of Arcane missiles as well as Arcane power, and boy are we strong. Arcane power increases our damage done by 30% for 15 seconds, and with the new rank of Arcane missiles we are back down to enemies dying in only 2 casts instead of 4, although this probably won't last very long. But with our new arsenal we have something greater to worry about: our gear. While at some point in the past our gear was looking very strong, it has all but fallen from grace. I mean, we're still rocking the staff from the dead mines 20 levels ago. Unfortunately, at this point sources of gear are pretty sparse. Vendors don't really offer gear at higher levels, and the items that do exist through drops and quests often have horrendous stats. This leaves us with one option: dungeons. Coming up we have the 4 Scarlet Monastery dungeons available, which have a plethora of useful items we are looking to snatch, as well as Razor Fen Downs. But first, I need to get my levels up a bit and spend some time unlocking the quest going into SM. We are also very close to getting our mount. With just a few more gold and we will drastically increase our movement speed and shorten travel times all around the world. Coming into Alterac, the guide insisted on me doing the elite quests in the area. I'm not too sure about this. The entire courtyard is filled with elites with massive amounts of HP. Some of them can even fear me for up to 8 seconds. But I am not one to disobey the arrow, so in the stealthiest fashion ever, I snuck my way past the elites, at times running away to reset or polymorph my way out, until eventually I found the enemy I was looking for. All I had to do next was sneak into a building, and by rotating polymorphs we escaped unharmed. When we take our time, it feels like we can overcome any obstacle. It is only in moments of rush that we get a few scares. And to really sell that point, when I saw a druid trying to contest my quest mobs, I sprinted into a building with way more enemies than I thought and kinda almost died. Now it was time for yet another elite quest, and this one is a tad bit trickier. I have to venture into Stromgarde in an enclosed area filled with patrolling ogres. The shamans in here have a chance to drop the quest item, and circumnavigating this place is kinda tricky, but luckily I got the drop on my first kill, and then I could sneak out with a few jumps. Recently I've also been adamant to look up enemies and potential abilities they might have before sending it straight into an AoE pull. And speaking of playing it safe, I also made sure to pick up a portal spell because somebody made a good point. While portals are not castable in combat, they are usable. That means if you put one up before you engage, you have an emergency exit for your whole party in case something goes south. Coming into Badlands, there is a simple yet very useful quest. Once we find the body of this dwarf, we are awarded with a jade. This gem is usually pretty hard to come by, and it's a requirement for a very particular quest that's incredibly handy for us. A mage-specific quest that takes us around the world in order to create 3 wands. One with arcane damage bonus, which is what we seek. This quest will eventually end in Scarlet Monastery, so getting this jade was another step towards preparing for the dungeon. Also, one of my favorite parts of this challenge is constantly looking around to find good AoE farm spots, and then pulling according to how good or bad it is. Coming back to Stranglethorn, I was feeling very brave against these goblins. So brave in fact I constantly pulled multiple without kiting, which of course in some instances forced me to hightail it out of there. Then it was time for another elite. The strategy when it comes to elites have changed a bit. First I pop Arcane power and send 3 Arcane missiles into the boss before the spell runs out. Then I try to use up most of my mana but save enough for mana shield, which I then use directly into a few ticks of evocation. The mana shield will block the attacks from the boss to not interrupt the cast of evocation and allow me to get my mana back. Then I just need to use the rest of my mana to finish up the elite. This lets us keep a target dummy and potion on hand at all times in case something goes wrong. With Bagthera down, we were just inches away from our mount, and all we needed was to finish up a few quests for the final stretch. Before that could happen, we yet again stood face to face with another elite. This time I made a small optimization to throw a grenade at the point where I'm going to evocation, giving me 2 extra seconds before they have a chance to break our shield. And with all those elite quests out of the way, it was time for another huge batch of quests to turn in, which we proceeded with haste before teleporting to Ironforge to pick up our mount. After careful consideration, I finally managed to choose which color suited us best. Now look, we even have matching eyes. This is massive. A 60% movement speed increase wherever we go in the world will speed up not only leveling our character, but also professions a lot. Of course, it has been a very long time for us without mount, so I instantly forgot about it and didn't use it. But with the mount, it was now time for me to do all the Mage Wand quest prerequisites, it now being easier to travel the world with the help of the mount. But as I was doing so, I got another jade drop, kinda ruining the whole point of my earlier speech and planning. and now that all the quests were done, I was ready to go into the monastery. After I found a group, of course. Well, while waiting to find a group, I decided to quest some more, which really ended up feeling like a mistake because of this boat quest. I'm supposed to find a single piece of parchment that can spawn downstairs in any of these boats at random. The thing is, they're so crowded with enemies that I barely have time clearing the place before stuff starts respawning. On the third ship, I had to clear the place 3 times before managing to make progress on the lower floor, but eventually I got my hand on the paper and traveled to our final elite quest of the zone. Like the others, we took care of him somewhat easily, but coming up next is theoretically King Bangalash. If you have no way of stunning the king, he summons 2 adds at 50% HP, and he also deals a disgusting amount of damage. This coupled with the fact that we don't need any of the quest rewards, we're just gonna skip it, and instead enjoy our once again beautiful quest log. It wasn't until after I had run across half of Stranglethorn, done all the quests and turned in every last one of them, that I realized I had done so without using my mount a single time. Because my brain is the size of a pea. It was at this point where I had to actually stop questing, because I was getting close to eclipsing the level range for Scarlet Monastery. Eventually I just decided to make my own group, and started whispering the entire server for people, and in the end, I was successful. And our band of merry adventurers made our way to the undead starting zone of Tirisfal Glades. Scarlet Monastery features 4 dungeons that are linked in a central hub area. You have the graveyard, library, armory, and then finally the cathedral. In terms of items, we are looking for a few. There are 2 potential helm drops that have intellect on top of the stats we already have, weapons we could use to finally replace the staff from Deadmines, and a necklace, again with added intellect. There are also some zone drops from trash, but most of those items have like a 1 in 3,000 drop chance. So I'm not getting my hopes up. Any upgrade we get our hands on here is massive and will most likely last us a very long time, if not all the way to 60. As we enter the graveyard, we instantly hit the jackpot. In this dungeon, a variety of different rare mobs can spawn, and we just happened to hit the one that drops the first helm that we can use, and with that drop, we got our first upgrade. Killing Thalnos dropped his offhand, which I agreed to pass to the healer since he was already running one-handed weapons. This is also where we struck a deal. I will pass the dagger from the library as long as he passes the staff, which he agreed to. But as we got to the library, unfortunately the dagger dropped, so I had to pass it. In theory, this deal was pretty good though. While the dagger is decent and features a good amount of spell power, leveling as a mage you almost always prefer intellect and stamina over it, because the coefficient of AoE spells is completely horrendous, making it basically a dead stat in those situations. In the armory, there is nothing that can drop. The only thing we can get out of this place is absolutely destroying the last set of trash that spawns after Hero is dead. With that out of the way, we moved on to the final dungeon, Scarlet Cathedral. Because we already secured the helm from the first dungeon, we're hoping to snatch the neck here if possible, but sadly, it was the helm that dropped, which I passed because while slightly better, taking 2 helmets would have been very greedy. So in the end, we got quite unlucky on loot, but at least the priest got absolutely decked, which doesn't help us at all. The upside of course being that we can now turn in our wand and get our best in slot item all the way until level 60. With this new and improved mana pool from the upgrades, I now have basically double the amount of total mana compared to what my water gives me. On top of this, I've also finally gotten around to speccing maximum mana, which even further increases the time it takes for us to get back into action. Then all of a sudden, a level 54 mage in our guild died. And looking further into it, he had gone AFK while flying into Winterspring, and a bear had aggroed onto him when he landed, which eventually killed him off. Which is a cruel reminder as to what can go wrong in the way you least expect. Drawing inspiration from that death, I began an AoE pull with some Nagas that apparently have a 10-second silence. Silence is the worst form of crowd control for us. When stunned, we can blink. When rooted, we can escape artist. But when silenced, all we can do is run around like a headless chicken. Luckily, it still does allow us to use engineering items, and the target dummy saved us yet again. Recently, I've also been adamant to look up enemies and potential abilities they might have before sending it straight into an AoE pull. After a very long time of searching, I managed to scrounge up a very nasty looking group for Razorfen Downs. On top of having basically every buff available in the game in our roster, we also essentially have 3 classes that can tank in case of emergency. Running there, I realized I had been using the wrong rank of Arcane Intellect for quite some time. So now our mana pool is even more immense. Arcane has a talent that reduces threat generation by 40%. Couple this with Blessing of Salvation, which reduces it by 30%, while multiplicative, that still lends itself to about a 60% threat reduction total, which lets me just go completely nuts with the Arcane Explosion. With this group, the dungeon did not stand a single chance, but we are looking to acquire this very good belt, which didn't drop, and also this very good chest, which also didn't drop. Yet our consolation prize is a very shiny ring, so it's not all that bad. We came into this episode with the goal of upgrading our gear, and while we were unfortunate in doing so, we still managed to snag quite a decent amount of upgrades, boosting our stats substantially. But looking ahead, it's not all that simple. As you can see, the quest guide warns us of the tremendous amount of grinding that is up ahead, with us having to bang out 3 whole levels from just killing mobs without doing a single quest. To offset this mind-numbing grind, we can instead venture into Uldaman and Solfarak, both offering a generous amount of experience, but that will be next time. See ya!